I'm Regina Lay,
And
sitting
I'm
in
Riza-
for Ces Oreña-Drilon.
And I'm Riza Diaz.
Tonight's big stories. New DPWH Secretary Vince Dizon finds a ghost project in Plaridel, Bulacan, and he fires District Engineer Henry Alcantara, as well as slaps a lifetime ban on the contractor, Wow Builders.
Meanwhile, protesters stormed the St. Gerard Construction Company in Pasig City as anger mounts at the Discaya couple. First Lady Liza Marcos' pet project, the Philippine Heritage Building, gets caught up also with one of their firms as well.
And the country's biggest business and civic organizations are fed up too and are clamoring for an independent probe on what they call excessive corruption in government.
Klarong-klaro na ghost project ito. Binabahan Bulacan eh. Obviously, criminal to. No, criminal to. I mean, pagnanakaw ito eh. Na talagang ito, kahayupan na ito. Hindi tao to mga taon to.
Well, on that note, former Bulacan 1st District Engineer Henry Alcantara has been fired, and that came after new Secretary Vince Dizon saw for himself a ghost flood control project that Alcantara approved.
Dizon also ordered the project contractor Wow Builders blacklisted for life, along with recommending a slew of other charges against them. Mobile journalist Ray Vicente with tonight's big story.
Barely a week after taking office, DPWH Secretary Vince Dizon has officially dismissed Henry Alcantara, the former district engineer of Bulacan's 1st District. In recent days, Alcantara had confirmed during the congressional hearings that he issued certificates of completion to questionable projects. He admitted too that he goes to the casino 2 to 3 times a month using an alias and a fake ID. Under the law, government employees are prohibited from entering gambling establishments. Senator Ping Lacson had tagged Bulacan's 1st District as the epicenter of ghost projects. On Thursday morning, Dizon got to see for himself what this meant when he visited a flood control project in Barangay Sipat, Plaridel, Bulacan. The project was awarded to Wow Builders for 96.5 million pesos and was marked completed in June 2024. But all Dizon saw was a huge mound of soil and steel lying around. They also found out from the barangay officials, residents, and the project foreman that actual construction only began last month.
Ang tawag ko dito, patay na, pinipilit buhayin. Kasi nabayaran na siya eh. Klarong-klaro na ghost project ito. Talagang ito, kahayupan na ito. Hindi tao to mga taon to.
Secretary Dizon said he also intends to dismiss engineers Bryce Hernandez and JP Mendoza as well. They're Alcantara's colleagues in the 1st District of Bulacan. Without naming names, Senator Lacson also later on alleged that 2 DPWH engineers who frequented casinos have collectively lost over 300 million pesos gambling.
I will ask the DPWH legal to recommend filing charges, the appropriate charges against Henry Alcantara. Obviously, criminal to. No, criminal to. I mean, pagnanakaw ito eh. 100 million. Binabahan Bulacan eh. Usually, 6 months, 7 months out of the year. Ang problema lang, talagang hayop talaga itong mga taon to. Yung area na alam na nilang hirap na hirap ang mga kababayan natin sa baha, kamukha yung sa kalumpit.
As for the project's contractor, Wow Builders, Dizon says a lifetime blacklist isn't enough.
Hayop na wawaw na ito. Kung ako kay Mr. Arevalo, I should just turn myself in right now.
Per records from the Securities and Exchange Commission, Mark Alan Arevalo is one of Wow's directors. Aside from this project in Plaridel, Wow Builders is also linked to alleged ghost projects in Kalumpit and Hagonoy. But during the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee hearing on Monday, Arevalo repeatedly invoked his right against self-incrimination.
Your Honor, I invoke my right against self-incrimination, Your Honor.
Anak ng patingo. Tinatanong ko, how can my question incriminate you? Tell me.
Sorry po, Your Honor.
Next in line to be blacklisted is Malolos-based Sims Construction Trading, which is behind the 55 million peso concrete riverwall project in Baliwag, Bulacan. President Bongbong Marcos inspected the project last August 20 and declared it as a gross project too. Aside from the firm's blacklisting, charges will also be filed under the revised Penal Code and the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act. Mobile Journal Ray Vicente, we are One News.
The Discaya family has surrendered to the Bureau of Customs 16 additional vehicles. Now, these luxury cars are on top of the 12 earlier secured by Customs through a search warrant. Their lawyer, Cornelio Samaniego III, said this is proof that the family has nothing to hide as all their vehicles are registered with the Land Transportation Office. The cars are now undergoing verification for importation records and assessment of duties and taxes.
Para po matapos na issue, makapag-comply kami sa panawagan din ng Bureau of Customs. Ito pong 28 luxury cars, nakarehistro po lahat ito sa LTO. Lahat po merong respective car plates. So hindi po magkakaroon ng plaka yan kung hindi po nakarehistro sa LTO po. Yes, sir. Malinis po lahat. So sana po matapos na yung issue luxury cars na yan, wala pong tinatago ang spouses Discaya.
Public anger at the Discayas is building up with protesters storming the St. Gerard construction compound in Pasig City this morning. The group, made up of flood victims and environmental activists, threw mud and rocks at the gate and vandalized the facade of the property. Some painted the word "Magnanakaw," corrupt, on the gates and wall and called for the Discaya couple to be jailed. Pasig police say they exercised maximum tolerance and immediately warned the protesters who complied. But they say this isn't the last property of the contractors that they will visit to demand accountability.
Habang tayo ay nilulubog sa baha at putik, lumulubog naman sila sa pera na ninakaw nila sa mamamayan. Mas salaula yung ugali ng mga magnanakaw at dapat silang managot.
As word of the protest reached the palace, press officer Claire Castro called for calm. Castro said the president does not want an escalation of public anger.
Sinusunod po natin ang due process. Ang pag-uutos na imbestigahan lahat ay para din po sa taong bayan. Pero hindi po ninanais na magkaroon ng kaguluhan para mas paalabin ang galit ng mga Pilipino. Hindi po yun ang nais ng Pangulo.
Pasig City Mayor Vico Soto also called for calm. In a Facebook post, Soto reminded protesters frustrated with corruption to not resort to violence. He said, "Don't feel hopeless. The momentum is on the right side now. Let us continue to fight for accountability, stronger institutions, and the rule of law." The Discayas lawyer Cornelio Samaniego III said their camp will file a criminal complaint against the organizer of the protests.
I-reviewin pa ho namin yung CCTV. Malaya po silang makapag-lahat ng kanilang saloobin. Pero wag naman ho silang gumamit ng dahas, pananakot, vandalism, pambabato. Hindi na ho ugali ng maayos na mamamayang Pilipino yan. Kung gusto nila ng accountability, ipulis mo muna ho nila yung sarili nilang organisasyon. Wag ho silang ganyan.
But it looks like even the pet project of First Lady Liza Marcos have been caught up with the Discayas. The reconstruction of the Philippine Heritage Building in Intramuros was supposed to be finished today, but when she visited it today, the First Lady found several issues. The cinema is still under construction, the elevator finishing is incomplete, and some rooms still have cement floors instead of tiles. The contractor of the project is Great Pacific Builders and General Contractor Incorporated, owned by the now infamous Discaya family. It had a contract price exceeding 107 million pesos. The building was intended to house the Film Development Council of the Philippines. The palace says the delays have frustrated the First Lady, who had it fixed to support the local film industry.
Ngayon lang na-discover. Actually, binibisita kasi ito ng First Lady. Kaya nalaman niya na ito, Great Pacific Builders and General Contractor Incorporated, mga Discaya talaga. Mas lalo siya na-dismaya. Unang-una, sabi niya, pakiramdam niya is, tayo pa ba? na nasa gobyerno, magbibigay lang sana ng isang regalo sa film industry, siya pang naloko. Hindi ba? So, mas masakit yon. Kasi ito naman ay hindi pang kanila, hindi pang personal. Pang ano naman to para sa film industry. So, yun ang masakit yun.
How about the president, ma'am? Nakarating na po sa kanya to. Ano pong naging reaction niya?
Sa ngayon, hindi pa po natin nakausap ang Pangulo patungkol dito. Pero definitely, pag nalaman din niya to, magagalit din yun.
Castro went on to say this incident shows the problems go beyond flood control projects. She alleged that some DPWH personnel may have colluded with contractors. Castro also vowed that the government will ensure that Discayas complete the work and may pursue charges, potentially even estafa.
Dapat lang nilang ayusin. At tignan natin kung ano pa ang magagawa nila. Kasi kung wala silang magagawa, lalo itong magiging hindi magiging maganda ang resulta, might as well, humarap na lang sila sa kaso. Pwede sila makasuhan, unang-una, civil liability, meron to. Diba? Kung meron makikitang panloloko, hindi ikakaila na pwede sila makasuhan ng estafa.
The country's most influential business groups are also fed up with corruption. In a joint statement, 30 groups came together to issue a statement declaring outrage at what they call the shameful, unabated, and excessive acts of graft involving some members of Congress and executive officials. Also named were the DPWH, LGUs, and even the Commission on Audit. The joint statement goes, "Mahiya naman kayo, tama na, sobra na, tumigil na kayo." The organizations urged an independent body to investigate, jail the corrupt, and recover stolen funds. They also proposed a 6-point plan from gathering evidence and blacklisting errant contractors to signing integrity pledges and engaging banks and the Anti-Money Laundering Council to expose unexplained wealth. Signatories include the Management Association of the Philippines, PHINEX, PCCI, SAPI, ECOP, and the Chamber of Commerce of the Philippine Islands, among other major groups. All right, let's talk about this further. Joining us tonight, we've got Management Association of the Philippines Governor Rex Drilon. He's also a governor in charge of MAP ESG and Shared Prosperity Committee, as well as the vice chair of the Center for Excellence in Governance. Good evening, sir. Welcome to the Big Story.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for making time for us. I understand you're at an event and just stepped out for us, so we'll make this very quick. First, talk us through the statement. What got you guys to this point where you felt like you needed to issue a joint statement?
Well, I think the corruption issue has reached a point where there's a lot of disappointment, disgust, outrage, not only in the business community but also in civil society, and I think even in the general citizenry, so to speak. So. MAP just initiated a draft of a statement, and within 48 hours, there were 30 associations, business and civil society organizations, who co-signed this strong statement, because it is a very strong statement and a very clear indication of why we are angry and what we can do and what we will do in the next few months to help our country bring out this follow-up in Congress, in the DPWH, in the LGUs, and all the other areas where graft and corruption is rampant widespread.
Oh, so the statement was originated from MAP. You guys thought of it first, yes, and then invited the other groups.
Other groups, yes.
And just for context, for the benefit of our viewers, how many members does MAP currently have?
MAP is an organization of CEOs and C-level executives numbering more than 1,200, representing the major corporations of this country.
Mm-hmm. And since then, Mr. Drilon, have you gathered more? Are there more companies, organizations wanting to join this?
Hello? Yes, I understand that there are other organizations that are willing to sign, and we'll accommodate them. The more, the better, and hopefully we can send a strong message to the administration to address this issue of corruption, which is, in a sense, killing our economy, killing our society, killing our sense of morality, only because a few greedy people are doing this crazy things to us.
At the start of the year, when you opened the MAP annual general meeting, I remember President Al Panilio gave a presentation showing that corruption.
Hello?
Can you hear me, sir?
I'm sorry, I cannot hear you.
Let's try again. Can you hear me now?
Hello, yes.
Mr. Drilon, can you hear me okay? This is Regina. You're on the Big Story. I think we're losing
I'm sorry.
We're losing him a little bit. I think it's the connection, sir. Medyo off yung connection. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. I'm hearing you now.
Okay.
Earlier, you were cut off.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now it's better?
This is better.
Okay, great. So I was saying that at the start of the year, during MAP's annual journal meeting, there was a presentation and you identified corruption as the #1 issue that amongst the business community. It came back as the #1 issue once again. What is the community sense? How bad has it gotten?
How bad is the problem?
Yeah.
Terribly bad. And it also helped that last month we had Mayor Benji Magalang to speak to the members of MAP in a general membership meeting, and he laid out in very clear terms the modus operandi of these corrupt officials. And then people were just disgusted with what they heard, and now the current hearings in Congress will bring out even more scandalous corruption activities, not only in the numbers, but also in the amount.
Do you have a general sense of how all of this, because right now there's so much attention on the flood control issues, does your group have a sense of how much it's cost the Philippines already?
Well, the general estimate of media is that 40% of our national budget of 6.3 trillion, that's about 2.5 trillion pesos, are wasted every year on corrupt practices. This amount of money not being used for development, and this is a criminal act of those corrupt officials. They're depriving the people of 2.5 trillion of development funds that should go to schools, roads, bridges, and so on. And they're not getting that benefit because of the crooked politicians and many in the executive department, especially the LGUs, are part of this conspiracy to rob the people.
So with all of this being exposed and there's more attention, how is this going to look as to foreign investment by our neighboring countries, by the ones investing in the Philippines?
Well, of course, we have to worry about that because the more people are convinced that we are a corrupt society, the less enthusiasm to invest here in the Philippines. So we better get our act together and clean this up, or we'll wind up, as usual, at the bottom of the ladder in terms of foreign direct investments, because people cannot trust us because of the corruption issue.
Yeah. We'll leave the conversation there for now, but we hope to have you in the studio another time to talk more about this. But thank you so much for talking to us tonight. Management Association of the Philippines Governor Rex Drilon. In other business news, President Marcos has signed into law the enhanced fiscal regime for the Mining Industry Act. The law, officially known as RA 12253, was signed by the President at a ceremony in Malacanang this morning. It simplifies and rationalizes the tax regime for large-scale metallic mining. One of the key provisions is that all mining companies will now be subject to a 5-tier royalty rate ranging from 1% to 5%. There will also be a tiered windfall profits tax ranging from 1% to 10%. In addition, local government units will receive 40% of the gross collections from excise taxes, ensuring that the communities who bear the brunt of the mining activities will also benefit from it. The Finance Department said the new measure is expected to generate an estimated average annual revenue of 6.26 billion pesos for existing mines.
Minerals are finite. Once extracted, they're gone forever. But if we use them wisely, tax them fairly, protect our environment as we mine, and ensure that revenues return to the people, then their value will outlive all of us.
We're going to take a quick break, but coming right up, party leaders in the House drop a plan to return the proposed budget back to the executive branch. We have details next when the big story returns. Keep it here. You're watching the big story here on One News. Budget deliberations at the lower chamber continued today after a short-lived proposal to return it to the executive. Yesterday, several lawmakers recommended sending back the NEP to the Budget Department after they found some irregularities. According to House Deputy Speaker Ronaldo Puno, these include funding for infrastructure projects that were already completed. There were also legitimate flood control projects that did not receive funding. But House Committee on Appropriations Vice Chair Representative Jose Alvarez said Budget Secretary Amena Pangandaman and DPWH Secretary Vince Dizon reached out to the House Speaker Martin Romualdez and vowed to address the errors in the NEP. Both agencies were given 10 days to complete the review. Pangandaman and Dizon's presence during the deliberations were also required.
Sila na nga nag-request na sila na pupunta rito. Tuloy na yon para daw marinig ni Sik Vince lahat ng mga reklamo. Kasi kami ayaw naman namin sana ipatuloy ito eh. Hanggang hindi nila makorek yan.
Meanwhile, Malacanang also called on the government agencies to revisit their respective spending proposals for 2026. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro said President Marcos will not hesitate to order a review if the lower house finds insertions and other inconsistencies. Castro also assured the public that the approval of the proposed 6.793 trillion peso budget for 2026 is still within schedule and that there is no need to worry about having a reenacted budget.
President Marcos says he wants the independent commission that will investigate flood control issues to have subpoena power. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro said Malacanang is finalizing an executive order creating the commission that will have authority to issue subpoenas. The composition of this investigative body has not been announced, and this comes amid questions over how effective the lower house can truly be in investigating itself. Congressman Toby Tiangco, who has been sounding the alarm on budget insertions for months now, for one believes the House probe will not amount to anything. He says even now there seems to be an effort to change the narrative and pin all the blame on DPWH.
It's so obvious. It's part of the plan to change the narrative. Kasi, di ba, noong SONA, ang sabi ng presidente, mahiya kayo, ibig sabihin referring to us. So they're doing everything. Hindi naman tayo pinanganak lang kahapon. Alam naman natin, ginagawa ang lahat para mailayo sa Kongreso yung issue. Di ba? Kaya kung sino-sino yung itinuturo nila na sinong may kasalanan. Ang very simple dito is sabihin nila, o doon lang sa DPWH. Di ba doon sa pinakita ni Mayor Magalong, pinakita naman niya, totoong meron yung contractor, totoong sinabi niya na meron yung contractor, nakita, sinabi niya, supposed to be may SOP sa DPWH. At supposed to be, may 20% sa Committee on Appropriations. Ito is logical na kung sino may pinakamalaking nakuha, yun ang una mong gustong tukuyin.
Okay, let's hash all of this out. Joining us tonight in studio, we've got House Deputy Majority Leader, Congressman Zia Alonto Adyong. Good evening, Congressman.
Good evening, ladies.
Thanks for coming all the way here.
Thank you. It's my privilege to be here.
Especially given the traffic.
I know.
So I guess the first thing is I'd have you react to what Congressman Tiangco just said about diverting the narrative away from the House and towards DPWH.
Well, let us remember and recall when the President delivered his SONA, it was within the halls of the House of Representatives when he made this expose. So I think it's just proper that the House of Representatives also take heed on the investigation. Imagine what would the public say if, for example, apart from all the investigations we did in the last Congress, now that some of our colleagues are allegedly involved or what do you call this, connected with these anomalous flood control programs, and suddenly we turn a blind eye and remain silent about it. So what would the public say? So I guess it's a matter of, the House of Representatives, because everything that we do in the House, especially the investigation, is all about rectifying some loopholes in the laws or in the policies. It's always in aid of legislation. If there are laws that are not well implemented, I guess it's it's not really a part, but it's a responsibility and obligation of the House of Representatives and the Senate for that matter. We're talking about the Congress, 2 chambers of Congress, to investigate and look into possible loopholes or some policies that are not really well implemented, so that we can also rectify these wrongs. And so I think it's part of the constitutional mandate of the House to investigate these allegations, especially if it was said publicly in the State of the Nation address within the halls of the House of Representatives. I think for me, if you ask me, it's a challenge. Apart from it's a responsibility, it's also a challenge that before we can cast, throw stones at somebody else, we also have to clean our own house, isn't it, right? So I think that's part of the idea, and it's a part of the motivation that the House is now doing. And so far as the flood control anomalies are concerned.
But is Congressman Tiangco right? Is there an effort to divert the narrative away from the House?
Well, Congressman Toby is a friend of mine. We may disagree on certain matters. We agree on several things, right? But at this point, particular issue, because it brought out, I think the explanation of Congressman Toby was a result of the first initial Infracom investigation. Now, we have to put into context that the Infracom was actually, the agenda at that time was actually to look into all of these anomalous flood control projects. You see, we have to compartmentalize the issue here. There's the budget processing issue, and there is also the implementation stage issue. Now, we are looking at the implementation stage issue, meaning those ghost projects, those flood controls that have not been completed. I mean, there's practically nothing happened, despite the fact that under the report of the COA and many other agencies, it says that 100%. So, of course, that's an implementation stage issue that we have to look into, and also as well as the 15 contractors that, according to Malacanang, have gotten so much huge money from all of these substandard flood control projects and the ghost projects. So those are the things that we need first to discuss. I think Congressman Toby was trying to at least introduce the issue in relation to Congressman Zaldy Co, being the former appropriations chairman, with the insertions, etc. So that can be addressed on a separate, for me, on a separate avenue and a separate platform and a committee. Remember when there was a motion from Congressman Shell Diokno and Congressman Laila de Lima saying that we cannot investigate ourselves, right?
Correct.
Well, I humbly disagree on that note, because number one, when it comes to allegations of misconduct of certain members of the House of Representatives, there is an internal disciplinary mechanism that we have. We can investigate
there's
ourselves.
An ethics committee.
There's an ethics committee. If there are allegations of corruption, misconduct, especially as scandalous as this anomalies involving the flood control, ghost projects, etc., there is internal disciplinary action that they can go to. They can file directly their concerns and allegations to the Committee on Ethics, which, by the way, the Committee on Ethics has that power to compel us, members of the House of Representatives, to be present and attend should there be an investigation happen. We are trying to compartmentalize the issue here.
So two components, there's the budgeting side, there's
And
the
there's the
implementation
implementation
side,
stage,
and you're
yes.
not deliberately trying to downplay the budgeting issues.
No, of course not. They are well interconnected, of course. But if there are lapses, for example, or violation or abuse of power or discretion on the part of the former, chairperson of the appropriation, that can be dealt with either to the Committee on Ethics. They can file that already to the Committee on Ethics, or they can also do that in the Committee on Appropriations, which, by the way, because of all of these things happening and came out in the open, not no less than the President saying that there is really some sort of a problem when you try to...
Something we should look into.
Yes. The Speaker of the House even made some reforms in the bicameral, even up to the end, up to the last stretch of the budgeting process, which is the bicameral. In fact, right now, during the we started the budget hearing deliberation, I think last week. So we introduced an innovation. It's a reform.
You abolished the small committee.
Yeah, the committee chairman, our committee chairman, Mika Swansing, met the CSOs who would be involved in the budgeting process. So we opened the budget process apart from the real-time, nakatelevise ito eh. Talagang real-time sa YouTube. You can see how.
We in the media have been asking for that for a long time.
Yeah.
Because
and
we always get shut out
reform.
at the very end of the budget
Yeah,
process,
and we also
right?
solicit inputs and questions directly from the CSOs so that they can have a semblance of ownership and participation over the budget, which basically is theirs.
Congressman, first time ba itong nangyayari?
Ano po?
This whole process, is this the first time that
Yeah,
the House is doing?
This is the first time that civil society organizations are involved in the budget process, meaning at least on the inputs and on questioning and on vetting what are the budget entries that are present reflected in the NEP. I think this is it's a positive reform that this current leadership in the House introduced. Up to the last point, the last stretch of the budget, which is the BICAM, which, according to many of the, with all these allegations, says that that's where the magic happens, di ba? Sa BICAM, kasi.
Isn't it?
I think because of the issue of the insertion.
Yes.
Yes. Basically, the insertion is just a word that means errata. Because if there are duplications, earlier I was listening to your. To
one of the
your
reports,
newsreels, to your reports, that the House is sending back, the budget, the NEP, for 2025 to the DBM for its review. And that is in compliance also with what the President, 2026, I'm sorry. That is also in compliance with the, with the directive of the President that DBM and DPWH should make a sweeping review over the budget of infrastructure. And that is in compliance with what we have actually, what the leadership in the House has decided on last night. Na there are several budget entries and line items that have duplication in the previews, which actually programs and projects have already been completed. No? And there are also ongoing multi-year implementation projects that have similar budget as to the previous year. Because if you have a program or a project that started this year, the presumption is next year you have a portion of that project have already been completed. So that's why it also affects the allocation of the funding. How come last year and this year pareho the same? That's why we want the DBM to review that and no longer us giving us the burden of introducing errata. Kasi also ayaw din namin masabihan na you mangled the budget and beyond recognition, tapos may kasalanan naman ng House of Representatives. So if we want to really, be serious about this, dapat talaga walang ganong klaseng mga entries na medyo problematic. That's why the leadership of the House, the party leaders decided to send it back to the DBM for its review, which unfortunately nagkaroon naman ng coordination.
Ano po yung timeline for this review to be done? Ilang araw, and will we still be on schedule as to passing it? Because we already know it's almost the end of the year. Meron pa tayong mga holidays.
No, there's still plenty of time. Yeah, I guess there are alam naman ng DBM yung portion of and I'm sure with the coordination between the House and the DBM, naman siya, targeted naman talaga yung mga line entries, mga budget entries and line items that have, some questionable items na po pwede naman tingnan. I think 10 days yata. I think with the directive of the President is 10 days to do some sweeping review.
The reforms are great, but we can't get away with trying to get to the bottom of the 2025 budget issues, right?
Yeah.
You talked about the BICAM. And, we spoke to former DPWH Secretary Manny Bonoan, who himself said 450 billion was inserted into his budget for 2025 that he doesn't know, that he didn't know about until he got the GAA, right? And I asked him, what was your reaction after you got that? And he said, well, I was very surprised. These are not projects that we vetted. And that's why there's so much scrutiny on the BICAM and the small committee, because we're blind to what happened there. Where did these 450 billion, of which 26 billion was vetoed by President Marcos, but it's such a small fraction of the original insertions, right?
Yeah,
so how do we get to the bottom of this?
Well, I agree. There has to be an investigation. That's for one. That's why we're doing that in the House of Representatives. So, as a result, looking forward, that's why we have we have already introduced reforms in the BICAM. In fact, I was listening to a report earlier. They also wanted the DBM and the DPWH and many other line agencies to be present during the BICAM discussion. I think that would answer, at least mitigate the concerns and the distrust. And it's very understandable that the emotion is very high right now. There's sense of disgust among the citizenry.
Right.
So I think that's one of the things that we should. It's a good thing that we have introduced that in order to insulate this budget from further manipulation.
But how do we exact accountability for the previous one?
But as to the already happened budget in 2025, I guess that's the purpose of why we're having this investigation. Now, I guess this is a whole nation approach. There are parallel investigations. The Senate is also doing the investigation.
Correct.
The House of Representatives is also doing some investigation. I just heard a couple of days ago that the President also wanting to create
an independent body.
Independent body, a truth commission, in order to find out what really happened from the budget processing. Why are these insertions have happened? And then all the way up to the implementation of this ghost project. So I guess it's a whole country, it's a whole nation approach, which basically can be complementary to one another. But to say one institution should be precluded from investigation, that is also saying that the Constitution should be rendered ineffective. Because the power of the House of Representatives, as well as the Senate, is not only to busy themselves with legislation, creating new laws, introducing
There's
new
also
measures,
oversight.
but to exercise, which is equally important, is the oversight function of the House of Representatives.
The man of the hour, if I can call him that, is Congressman Zaldy Co, right? Because he was Appropriations Chair in the previous Congress. And we now have word from the spokesperson, Princess Abante, that he's been in the U.S.
In the U.S.
for medical reasons. What else do you know about this?
Well, I don't know anything apart from what I've heard from Princess Abante. In fact, it was just earlier today that I learned that he's in the United States for medical to avail of some medical treatment. So
But we
apart
don't know
from that, I don't know anything about
how long he's
his
been there.
whereabouts. I actually do not know. Yeah.
Can we demand for him to return?
Well, anybody can say demand for certain issues to be not only the issue but those who are involved in such issues. to say something about what's happening, and actually it's also to give them the platform
opportunity,
and the
yeah.
opportunity to say their piece also. So I don't know. I'm not sure when is he going to stay there the night. For how long will he be needing medical attention? I just learned it today from our spokesperson. Yeah.
Of course, he's not the only person at the center of this budget issue, right? Because the small committee is made up of 4 people: the APRO chair, the vice chair, who was at that time former Congresswoman Stella Kimbo, majority leader, minority leader. Majority at that time was Congressman Manix Dalipe, and then also minority was Congressman Nonoy Libanan. We haven't heard from these people, and we've been trying to get their side on the matter as well, because only they can shed some light on these budget questions, right? What's the House doing about that?
Well, we actually, the House of Representatives is composed of more than 300. So every one of us has that privilege to say, their piece or to express their position. We cannot compel a member to say and to respond to certain allegations. No? But what I can tell you is that the small group, it's actually a long-standing mechanism of practice, because we have plenty of congressmen. Ito kasi nangyayari in the budget. After the budget briefing in the committee level, and it goes up straight to the plenary, you have more than 300. Right now it's 300, but before it's 200 plus, right? So you have 300 plus congressmen. And with the NEP, all the budget items reflected in the NEP, as I've said earlier, the reason why we're sending it back, because there are some sort of questionable entries in the budget. So what normally is being given to us by the executive, by the DBM, is this: you do the errata in your own district, errata. Meaning you do the amendments, okay, yourselves. So what the 300 plus do is to introduce amendments in order to be more reflective based on what is needed in the district, for example. So it's impossible, impractical to allow all 300 plus congressmen to take the rostrum and introduce the amendments, because we are also working on a very tight schedule. Remember, before the end of this year, we have to do the BICAM, so we have to submit the HGAB. So what the small group do is to request the individual congressmen to have it written, the errata, so that they can collect
Tapos
that.
sila lang yung magpapasok. I get the
and then the
rationale for the small committee. I get the rationale for it. And you're right, it was formed more than 10 years ago. That's a long-standing congressional practice. The question there is, to be precise about it, for instance, former Congresswoman Stella Kimbo, can she be called to the hearings, for instance, to shed some light on the matter?
It's actually putting the horse ahead of the wheel. I mean that's putting the wheel ahead of
putting the cart in front of the horse.
Yeah. Okay. So the issue right now is about the flood control. Let's see how it develops. Let's how this discussion evolves. It would be unfair, of course, to assume right away that just because they are part of the small committee, automatically their presence is needed there, and do some explanation to. Yun ang sinasabi kasi ni Chairman Ridon. Like, we take this one at a time. This is so important as to making sure that there has to be no stone unturned. And for us to move forward meticulously, we cannot just jump to the next step and leave altogether because we feel that this is more important than this one that we're discussing here. We have to do this meticulously, one step at a time. So if, for example, it will come to a point that certain personalities and former colleagues would require, sharing their, what they have experienced or what they did during the discussion in the small committee. I believe Congresswoman Stella and all the rest of those colleagues, they are decent enough to explain to the public what happened, and they have. I'm sure they can also defend, and explain to the people what transpired during the meetings, in collecting all those erratas and then filing it all together and then send it to the Senate as the HGAB, the General Appropriations Bill.
May minutes ba dapat yung small committee meetings?
I'm sorry?
May minutes ba dapat?
That I don't know because I actually got elected last Congress lang. So everything was new to me, no? During the previous
the 19th Congress.
So I just learned about this, well, I heard about how that mechanism, that long-standing mechanism, that's been in practice in order to collate all the errata. But I do not exactly know when do they meet, where do they meet, and how often do they meet.
But how's the mood, Congressman, in the lower house? Ngayon po na.
Well, we're multitasking naman kami lahat eh. Lahat naman talaga, it's just the business as usual. We do a legislation, even if this had this issue not brought out in the open, we're actually doing what we do. I mean, every day we do pass legislation, we do meet in, for committee hearings, especially at the season, budget cycle. So ganun talaga, that's the mood. It's business as usual.
The difference this time around, I guess, is there's a lot of public anger.
But I'm also looking at the positive side of it, because now the people is really want to take in charge of the budget, and that's a good thing.
The awareness,
yes,
diba?
yes. I think that's the light at the end of the tunnel, because we are seeing a positive reform that we want, that needs to be introduced even before pa dapat, no? So we're looking at I'm looking at the positive side of it, right? Like right now, when you talk about infrastructure projects, I mean, we mean business this time, because infra affects the very lives of the people on the ground. It makes their lives a lot easier
or harder.
Yes. So the positive side of all of this discussion and all of these things is that, teka lang, kailangan talaga natin na gawing mas konkreto at mas transparent ang proseso ng paglalahad natin ng pondo ng bayan para sa ating taong bayan. So I mean, it becomes more serious at this point in time and more transparent. That's how I see the positive side of it.
I forgot what I was. I lost my train of thought.
Looking at your phone.
No, because may messages yung EP namin, but I wanted to come back to the implementation side of the equation. Okay, fine. You don't want to tackle the budget issues right now. That will be for later, and we will hold you guys to that. But on the implementation side, you've spoken to the contractors. We're seeing a lot of issues crop up, right? For instance, the campaign donations. What's the House looking to do about those?
We're not actually looking at that per se right now. We're not basing ourselves with that, with that information or revelation from the previous budget. I think yung sa about kay Senate President, but I guess the COMELEC now has its attention to it. I guess the COMELEC is also doing their own separate investigation on whether or not such violations on the Omnibus Election Code was committed. Was there any violation to it? So we are not actually basing ourselves with that, but we are focused on the current status of the ghost projects, why it was implemented, and why did COA, why did signed and then declared completed. So we want to take things one at a time.
What about the disclosure, right? So on Congressman Chel Diokno's motion, he compelled the Infracom to issue disclosures about their relations, connections, any relatives that are in the business, in the contracting business.
It was actually adopted. Nobody
adopted,
actually objected to that motion. But remember, before we assumed the office, we already disclosed our assets, our interests, our business. Our business, if we have businesses or pecuniary interest over some other businesses, we already have to, disclose all of this information to our Secretary General. So if there's an additional requirement for us to, for the committee to make sure that none of the members who will be doing the investigation have, pecuniary interest over certain businesses, I think it's just to make sure that the committee is not only transparent but it has the credibility and the integrity to pursue this investigation,
But
then
the
there's nothing wrong with that.
But the bigger question is, can you force your members to inhibit if they are to be found to have conflicts of interest, right?
I think that would depend on, I guess, to give you an honest answer, that would depend on the member, you know. Now, nobody can compel the member.
Exactly.
But siyempre man, we presume to be good, decent individuals naman, di ba? Meron naman tayong delikadesa. Kung sino man naman din ang involved doon sa ganitong klaseng panawagan. And let's remember, the topic that we were discussing is ghost projects. Yung mga connection with the 15 contractors, with the Wow, etc. I don't think congressmen who were seated there during the first,
State of the Nation.
Yes, first no, the first Infracom investigation have interest or have dealings with all of these contractors. So kaya nga the question is, how can we set the parameters as to who should sit in this Infracom? Would it be those members who have direct transactions with the Discayas, with the Wow, with the ano? So how do you set the parameters?
I think the parameters should be any government contractor.
Then that's fine.
Then you should declare it up to the third degree of consanguinity and affinity, and that's it.
But that's fine. I think we are working on the basis that all of us have our own integrity, that we believe that if we have a conflict of interest over certain matters that are discussed in the investigation, that we should recuse ourselves. That's inhibition. I don't think there would be any person, because we have also to work on the basis of, may belief kasi na yung sense of regularity, presumption of regularity. Hindi naman lahat, wala naman I think na tao na alam naman niya na meron siyang connection doon. Kasi maski anong gawin mo, malalaman mo rin eh. I mean, logic would dictate that if you have something to hide, you will not get yourself involved in something that actually investigate your own business, right? So
they could stay there. Exactly. Or they could.
But we're talking about the Infracom, members of which are many heads. I mean, how can you dictate something? How can you dictate something or influence some members there in the Infracom? Nakita nyo naman from the very beginning, lumabas na lahat talaga yung gusto nila. So it's really hard to say you can influence the Infracom when you know for a fact that there are independent-minded members of this Infracom who are vocal, who wants to really dig deeper, who wants to know really the truth. So anybody, one member, can never influence the outcome of the Infracom.
And the next hearing is?
Well, that would be, I guess, next week.
Yeah.
But
so Senate, September 8th. For the House, have you set a date yet?
No, we still have to discuss it. I mean, the three chairmen have to decide on when. But it's going to be next week. I'm pretty sure about that.
And outside of the ones that you invited last week, any other special personalities, characters that you're looking to invite?
Well, we have already issued subpoena to those who have
the contractors.
Contractors, and there are also several other personalities that were mentioned that would be invited, I guess, in the next hearing.
Well, let's hope they are still here, because.
Well, we already issued. We actually coordinated this over with to our counterpart, to our partner, the BI, Bureau of Immigration.
For a whole departure order?
Yes, so that they can also be put into a lookout bulletin.
They are in the lookout bulletin.
Right.
But
yes.
they can't stop them from leaving the country. That's the problem.
But I guess there is some sort of a way in order for them to really not, flight is an indication of guilt, so not be able to move out and then escape this investigation. We want to make sure of that. And the BI is very much helpful in assisting us throughout this investigation.
Yeah, I don't know. Some of them are apparently overseas for medical reasons, but we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your time and for talking to us candidly. Congressman Sia Alonto Adyong, Deputy Majority Leader. And that's all we have for today on The Big Story Thursday. Thanks for watching.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
We'll be back tomorrow at 7:30. Have a good night.
Coming up is play-by-play with Esqueleton, and joining her is Jot Sulit. Hi! Kamusta?
Hi,
we are waiting for Alex Ayala. Wala na namang tulugan, and So much
Yeah.
happening. The combine too.
Yes.
Lots